Oh, hey, good morning, good afternoon, everybody, depending on which part of this oft beleaguered country that you're in. You're watching Rebel Roundup, Rebel News' daily news and opinion show. I'm your host, Sheila Gunn-Reid, and I'm flying solo today. Normally, I have my friend and co-host, David Menzies, with me today, but he's out on special assignment this Monday, so it'll be worth it. The sacrifice for both of us, I believe, will be worth it, but you're going to have to put up with me talking to myself instead of riffing with one of my friends from work for an hour. Now, I should tell you how you can get involved in the show, and please help your old friend Sheila out and do get involved in the show because I'd like to read your chats instead of just talking to the ether by myself. So if you're watching us on Rumble, excellent free speech platform, if you want to get involved in the show and support the work that we do here at Rebel News, if you leave a Rumble rant, that's their paid chat. And if it's over the $5 US cutoff, it's obligatory that we read it on air. If it's under that, I'll do my very best, time permitting. And since I'm by myself, time will likely permit. So I would really appreciate you doing that. And I appreciate you choosing us at all times when, you have less money left in your pocket than ever before, thanks to inflationary pressures caused by liberal government mismanagement, out of control spending, and out of control immigration. Now, if you're watching us over on YouTube, same rules apply. Their paid chat is called a super chat. And if you miss a live version of the show, but you want to send me some moral support because I'm flying alone today, you can leave a paid comment called a super thanks. All right, let's get into it. We've got some movement on my least favorite coffee company issue. If you've been boycotting Tim Hortons, like so many people, including myself, have been doing, I am here to tell you that they are now admitting that you can indeed hire Canadians if you want to. The Tim Hortons, who have draped themselves in the cloak of Canadiana and patriotism for far too long, but I think are the biggest culprits of the abuse of the temporary foreign worker program. Well, they've launched a campaign because they know which way the wind is blowing that aims to recruit 10,000 new local team members. So they say, and it looks like they're only doing this because they might not have access to as many temporary foreign workers as they have been relying on. In a release sent out Monday, the Canadian coffee chain said that out of 110,000 Tim Hortons employees, 4,000 were hired through the TFW program, a number it said has declined steadily since 2024. I do not believe that for a second if you've been to a Tim Hortons lately. Efron, can you just scroll up? They're not doing this no, scroll up. You're scrolling down, my dude. No, the first paragraph is pretty telling. They're not doing this because they want to, because it's the right thing to do to address the youth unemployment crisis in this country after years of, I don't know, bringing in a slave underclass that drives down our wages and then drives up the cost of everything else. Tim Hortons is launching this campaign because they are concerned, although it's not necessarily the case, but the government has announced, I'd like to see it in action though, that the number of temporary foreign workers is declining. So I think they're concerned that they won't have access to the same slave underclass as they have had. And let me just put a pin on this before somebody says, Sheila, you cutting temporary foreign workers, since the majority of them come from the Indian subcontinent, sounds a little racist. I don't care where these people are from. If they are coming into the country and taking jobs that could be done by Canadians, but in particular, Canadian youth who, if you're age 15 to 19, your unemployment rate is at 20%. That's atrocious. If I don't care where you're from, just go back to where you came from. If you're here temporarily to fill a labor market void, and really there is no labor market void, out you go. And so now Tim Hortons is doing this on the eve of Dunkin' Donuts entering the marketplace. So they will have competition for the, I don't know, the blue collar coffee crowd, the normal coffee crowd, the people who don't care for Starbucks. This is a convenient announcement, I believe, because if Dunkin' Donuts walks in the door and says, you know what? we're going to hire just Canadians. We're not going, you won't find our name on the LMIA database. That's the Labor Market Impact Assessment database. You have to fill out that before you get access to temporary foreign workers. Um, if Dunkin' Donuts walks in the door and says that, man, Tim Hortons is in for a world of hurt. We've got the Conservatives coming out on this, but also seeing right through what Tim Hortons is doing. This is Andrew Lawton, former journalist from Juneau, now the MP for London, Ontario. He says at the start, no corporation should be relying on temporary foreign workers for service jobs when unemployment is as high as it is, especially youth unemployment. Exactly. I see this for what it is, and this is pernicious and opportunistic. I think Jamil Javani, Efron, I hate to put you on the spot, he said something very similar. And I'll do my best not to darken Tim Hortons' doors until they don't have a single temporary foreign worker. He says this is good news, but we must ask, why weren't they already doing this? Yeah, if you can all of a sudden staff up 10,000 Canadians, why didn't you staff up 10,000 Canadians before today? Why did big corporations and liberal politicians tell us that Canadians don't want to work? And who else is using the temporary foreign workers program but doesn't actually need it? Yeah, this just tells me Tim Hortons doesn't actually need it. And I'm old enough to remember about 90 seconds ago when Tim Hortons and Restaurants Canada, which is their lobby group, said young Canadians are too lazy for these jobs. They don't want them. They're too lazy. So all of a sudden you found 10,000 young Canadians who aren't lazy after you maligned them in such a way. Give me a break. It's just ridiculous. As I said, they're doing this on the eve of Dunkin' Donuts coming into the country, and that's why they're doing it. And let's not let them play fast and loose with the rules here, because I did a story not all that long ago. I got my hands on the lobbying records from Tim Hortons. And not only were they lobbying for an increase in temporary foreign workers to be allowed in the country, but they were doing this little backdoor temporary foreign worker thingamajiggy. They wanted a loophole created so that if you were a temporary foreign student, and boy, we know there's a fraudulent bunch of those in this country, they wanted the temporary foreign students to be able to work more hours. I think move from 30 hours a week that they're allowed to work. So they get to steal a part-time job from a Canadian up to 36 hours, which is approaching full-time. So don't kid yourself. These people may not be using temporary foreign workers, or at least 10,000 of them. Now come on, we know there's a lot more. We've all been to Tim Hortons lately. But their way around this, I predict, will be to be using temporary foreign students who can work more hours. Anyway, that's Tim Hortons trying to repair its image before a major American competitor comes into the market. And you know what? I'd rather have coffee at a major American competitor than a fake Canadian company. I mean, just fake all the way through. It's not Canadian owned and operated, and it doesn't employ Canadians. In fact, it undermines Canadian employment. So I welcome our new Dunkin' Donuts overlords. I hope you do too. We've got a video here from Billboard Chris. So over the weekend, I missed this as it happens. Now, why did I miss it as it happens? Well, I was at the CCFR, so the Canadian Coalition for Firearms Rights. I was at their AGM, their convention. I was the keynote speaker. And if I'm going to toot my own horn, it was a banger of a speech. But I missed this as it happens. And so I'm just watching it with you right now. I know our Drea Humphrey was at this event, and she said it was chaotic. And I think I'm being kind when I say it was chaotic. In the morning call. She's got a follow-up report coming, but Billboard Chris Elston. Now, this was a town hall on property rights, but you never know who's going to get to the mic. And Pierre Poilievre is known for taking questions on every issue regardless of what the press availability is meant to cover. Billboard Chris Elston, you guys know him as a fierce advocate for parental rights and bodily autonomy for kids, protecting kids from the disease of gender confusion that is inflicted upon them so frequently in the school system. Well, he asked Pierre Poilievre a question about parental rights. I haven't seen this. Let's react together.
Good evening. My name is Billboard Chris. My parents had a lot of foresight when they named me because I traveled around the world with a sign that says children cannot consent to puberty blockers. And I have conversations with people because I consider this to be child abuse. Now, I know you've spoken briefly about this before as it being a provincial issue, and I'm thankful for people like Carrie Lynn Findlay who sat down with me at my home a couple weeks ago, because if elected leader, she plans to ban this. I'm thankful to people like Carmen Bangu, one of our MLAs who's in the room tonight, who also is enthusiastic about banning this. But we have a couple federal bills, namely C-16 and C-4, which do not help. We have a lot of federal funding from the government which goes to organizations which push this idea in our schools that there is such a thing as a child being born in the wrong body. And children are being chemically castrated, they're being maimed, they are cutting off the breasts of girls as young as 14 years old across Canada because of this idea, this abusive idea that they were born wrong.
So you're going to have to get to your question. It's very important, but get to your question.
I'm getting to it. This is important. This is the biggest child abuse scandal in the country. So my question is, what does the federal government plan to do about this? Because it's not just a provincial issue. The Conservative Party should be leading on this. It's a winning issue. And I would like to know, as leader of Canada, what you plan to do to stop this child abuse.
The policy of the Conservative Party, as adopted by our national convention in Quebec City 3 years ago, is that there should be no irreversible sex changes for kids, period. That is our policy. And I support that policy. I support that policy. I don't think when you're not old enough to get a tattoo, to go into a liquor store, to have a drink, to join the military, to vote, that you are equipped to make the decision to irreversibly change your body. And I think it's wrong, it shouldn't be happening, and it shouldn't be allowed, period. We also think that biological men have no place in female bathrooms, change rooms, sport, period. And our policy as a Conservative government would reflect all of the things I just said. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
That's great. That was great. I'm glad Chris asked that question. I think more people need to see that the Conservative Party is, I was going to say hardline, but it's not hardline. It's completely in line with reality and normal people. This is such an 80-20 issue. And when I say 80-20 issue, I mean there's 80% of people who are severely normal on this issue and 20% that are radical and crazy. But that 20% is loud, and they seem to occupy all the spaces of influence, like education and politics. But if you're just a severely normal person, of course you don't think that your 6-year-old daughter should be exposed to a lady wiener in the change room. You know what I mean? And I'm glad that Chris asked that question, regardless of the fact that this was a property rights town hall. I see the Conservatives brought one of my favorite new MPs, Billy Morin, to this event. So he was and he would bring a unique perspective to the property rights issue with regard to how it's being affected by land claims in British Columbia, and not even land claims, just completely ceding property rights over to Indigenous people in British Columbia, because Billy Morin was the chief of Enoch Cree First Nation here in Alberta, and he's such a good get for the Conservatives. And I think he would bring a balanced perspective to the Indigenous property rights issue. All right, let's bump ahead. I haven't watched this either. You guys, it was a busy morning, so I didn't catch up on all my internets. before I jumped on the show. Winnipeg mayoral candidate Umar Hayat deploys a bizarre new campaign communication strategy. He asks drug addicts if he can consume their fentanyl. Excuse me, what? Okay.
Oh, I see. This is fentanyl? Okay, nice. How this fentanyl work? Can I take it?
No, we can't. No.
This is opiate, this thing? Yeah. Oh, I see. So how it work? So this thing, we just put it right here? This is opiate?
No, we can't. No, you can't take it like that.
No?
No. I would recommend you not to because it's a really bad poison.
It's a bad poison inside?
All right. That's Umar Hayat. He is a Winnipeg real estate agent. He ran, I think, for mayor 8 years ago against Brian Bowman. Brian Bowman has sort of overseen the decay, or at least he was, when he was there, he was overseeing the decay of Winnipeg. But when the drug addicts are telling you not to take the fentanyl, maybe we shouldn't be giving the drug addicts fentanyl. And I think that's the point he's trying to make here. They don't need drugs. They need treatment. And if the drug addicts are telling you not to take it, maybe you shouldn't take it. Like if the drug addicts are making more sense than our liberal politicians, when they're in the throes of opioid madness, and they still have the wits about them to say, Omar, don't take that. That's bad for you. Maybe we shouldn't be giving it to them. Right? Current Winnipeg leadership, current Manitoba leadership, Wab Canoe, I'm looking at you, and all of Health Canada. How can you people be making less sense than the Winnipeg drug addicts right now? Okay. Speaking of crazy people, I must have just missed this at the airport yesterday, and I'm glad I did. So I flew home from Toronto yesterday night, and apparently I missed a protest at Toronto Pearson. Now, Pearson's a big place. It might not have been in my terminal. I'm sort of glad I missed it because I'm sure it would have delayed my trip through security. The pro-terrorist crazy people were at the airport. Is this in departures? I don't know what terminal it is. Pearson is a huge airport. But they were shouting, Viva Intifada at the airport. Given the violence that Intifada is, our friends from Leviathan say, this airport could care less about the safety of its passengers. Yeah, Intifada means violent uprising. Doesn't give me a lot of peace hearing that at the airport post 9/11. Thank you very much. Let's watch. How in the name did these people get into the airport en masse? You could just now go into the airport. You just walk into the airport and have a major protest that calls for terrorism at the airport of all places. By the way, this airport, one of the most surveilled places in the entire country, if not the most surveilled place in the entire country. So why aren't these people being arrested? This is not like a public space. This is not the town square. You shouldn't be able to hold a heavily disruptive protest calling for terrorism at the airport, especially when planes have been used repeatedly, not just 9/11, but repeatedly in acts of political violence. How is this even possible? What's Doug Ford doing about this? Who's being fired over this? Airport security, or, like there's RCMP at the airport. Where were you guys? How did this even happen? This is terrible. What about the safety of our airports? That this could go on. Of course, there's your standard liberal white boomer grandmas there. If you can see them. Lots of white-haired boomers with their Kafia's on. There's the lady right there jamming away. These old bra burners. They should have had kids and grandkids, and then they wouldn't be plaguing us with this stuff. This is what happens when you don't have kids and grandkids to keep you busy, keep your life fulfilled in your golden years. You end up at the airport with the terrorists, grinding airport security to a halt. Embarrassing. Still on this topic, from our friend and colleague, Scarlett Grace, who's been on this beat, posters of missing 14-year-old Jewish girl Esty were torn down in the Bathurst and Shepherd area. 3 guesses as to whom did this? Esty went missing, I think a little over a week ago. 14-year-old girl. She left with no shoes on. She hasn't been seen since. Rebel News has deployed our billboard truck to the area. Just trying to raise awareness for her, get her face out there. You can't even be missing and Jewish in a Jewish neighborhood without these people coming to make sure that no one ever sees your face. She didn't do anything. Her crime is being Jewish, I guess. Like, she's a missing child. She's a missing 14-year-old girl. I can't even imagine what her parents are going through. And someone is tearing down posters of her face so that she may never be found because she was born Jewish. Tell me again it's about the Israeli government. Tell me again it's about, this is our truck out on the streets. Just trying to help. What else can you do? People feel helpless. But next time these people say, oh, it's about the political actions of the Israeli government, what does Esty have to do about that? Absolutely nothing. This is just the same age-old hatred that's always been. And, they're pointing and saying it's anti-Zionism, it's whatever. We don't know. Then why are you tearing down posters of a 14-year-old missing girl? Sickening. This is also in the National Post today. The Help Find Esty posters are being ripped down, not just in Bathurst and Shepherd, but across Toronto. And as the author points out, these are not political posters. These aren't protest signs. This is a missing child who left her house with no shoes on, whose parents are beside themselves. This is just anti-Semitism, plain old anti-Semitism. Speaking of anti-Semitism, Liberal MP Salma Zahid, she's posing with a pro-terror supporter in the GTA. This is from The Boss, or Ezra says, 3 terrorism supporters Canada has imported our anti-Semitism problem. So, Firaz al-Najim, who has the mullahs, the ayatollahs on his shirt, like the bad guys in Iran, on his shirt, and Salma Zahid was like, let's get in there, get a little closer, let's get a picture. He said he has a nice interaction with Liberal MP Salma Zahid, and she promised that she would not bow to any Zionist lobbies. And she, of course she did, because she hasn't come out and corrected the record. And she said she'll continue to stand up for Palestinian rights. We also discussed the Muslim Association of Canada national speakers that weren't able to attend due to Canada Border Agency. And she said she's solving it. For once, we didn't let terrorism supporters into the country. And Salma Zahid has promised this guy with the mullahs on his shirt that she's going to do something about it. That's our Liberal government in action, guys. Let's go ahead. We could talk about the terrorism problem in this country all day, and it feels like I'm gonna. This is from Global News. Quebec City area man arrested in terrorism investigation, but unlike Tamara Lich, he's released on conditions. And of course, this is a good Quebecois name coming up. Police say they arrested Mohammed Ali Ben Chaoua. We talked about this last week in Quebec on Thursday because they had reasonable grounds to fear he might commit terrorism offenses. So they have reasonable grounds to fear that he's going to commit these things. And so they let him out with a promise to behave himself. Do you promise not to do that terrorism that you said on TikTok you were going to do? So he was released on a terrorism peace bond. So he might not be able to travel, but we don't really know what his conditions are. We just know historically what the conditions have been for these sorts of bonds. So he might not be able to hang out with his terrorist friends, or do the terrorism. I feel safer already, don't you? Tamara Lich ended up in jail for 50 days because she took a picture with a fellow convoyer, and her lawyer was in the picture. Now, she was allowed to talk to her fellow convoyers as long as a lawyer was present. A lawyer was quite literally in the picture, and they still sent her back to jail for 50 days. Now, and once a real judge saw that, they let her out, but that's 50 days of her life behind bars that she spent that she will never get back. And this guy gets out on a terrorism peace bond with a promise to behave himself. What could possibly go wrong? I mean, and when you see Liberal MPs like the aforementioned one with the picture with the guy with the mullah, of course, when you see that those are your lawmakers, it's natural for the judge to do what the judge just did. We've got a document here it's from the City of Toronto website. I can't even believe this. City of Toronto. I just came from there, so I know it's a real place, but I couldn't make this stuff up if I was trying to make fun of the wokest city in Canada, and I was just trying to find, like, imagine the most woke scenario things that a woke city would do. I couldn't even come up with this. Like, give me 4 Michelob Ultras, a pack of beef jerky, and a campfire, so I was right in the zone. I couldn't come up with this stuff. Never in a million years. It's a land acknowledgement and a drug toxicity crisis acknowledgement, whatever the heck that is. Let's read some of it together, shall we? The City of Toronto acknowledges that we are on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. A lot of Inuit people in Toronto these days. I'd like to see the census numbers on that. The city also acknowledges that Toronto is now covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaty, signed by the multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. This is exhausting. African ancestral acknowledgement? Excuse me, what? The City of Toronto acknowledges all treaty peoples, including those who came here as settlers, as migrants, either in this generation or in generations past, and those of us who came here involuntarily. Okay. Particularly those brought to these lands as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and slavery. We did not participate in the transatlantic slave trade. In fact, we were the end place of liberated slaves, freed slaves, or escaped slaves. They knew they could come to Canada for freedom. We didn't do these sorts of things. Now, there was a lot of slavery between the Indigenous peoples. A lot. But what? Nobody was involuntarily kidnapped to Canada unless we're talking about the recent trafficking problem, human trafficking. People have been kidnapped out of Canada to China. I wouldn't mind seeing a line here about that because I think it happened on the streets of Toronto. If we're going to go all in, let's actually be accurate. We pay a tribute to those ancestors of African origin and descent. Wow. Drug toxicity crisis acknowledgement. I haven't read this. Do you think they're going to acknowledge that Toronto shouldn't be giving out drugs to drug addicts? No, me neither. The City of Toronto acknowledges the tragic and substantial losses that people continue to face during the ongoing drug toxicity crisis. These losses and the grief experienced are immeasurable. Quit giving them drugs. You know how you could stop people from dying of drug overdoses? Well, you could try to get them off the drugs, and in lieu of that, maybe stop providing the drugs. Well, you know what? You could do both. That's what we're doing here in Alberta. We acknowledge that this crisis is noted, oh my God, is rooted in systemic discrimination. People who use drugs often experience stigma and multiple intersecting forms of discrimination, including racism, sexism, and colonialism. How about it's a personal choice to do drugs? Like, a lot of people grew up in bad circumstances and don't choose to self-medicate. It is a choice that someone is making. You know, someone saying a sexist thing to me will not drive me to drugs unless I choose that. Like, go and look at my ex mentions. It's always some sort of, pardon me, my cat's on the desk. There's always some sort of vile left-wing male feminist ally saying just disgusting things to me. Do you think that's going to drive me to do drugs? Only if I choose that. We've just taken personal responsibility right out of the mix here. It's something we made them do drugs, guys. Anyway, many of us are mourning individually and collectively. In this document, we present data related to the crisis with respect and a heavy appreciation for what they mean and how they refer to our loved ones, friends, families, and colleagues. This is ridiculous. And I say this as, you know, like, and I don't think I'm particularly special. Everybody knows somebody afflicted by the opioid crisis. And yeah, everybody has a hard life. It's your choices that take you down those certain paths. But apparently we did it. We were sexist. We were colonialists. We were racist. So that made somebody do drugs. Wow. Thanks, Toronto. We got two more things and we'll hit an ad break because I could use an ad break. Nate Erskine Smith. Remember Nate Erskine Smith? He got mugged by reality in his nomination. So former Liberal MP, he was really, what's the right word I'm looking for? Butthurt when he was not chosen for a cabinet position by Mark Carney. He's the guy behind the vegan bill. So I realize that his emotions are pretty well soyed out on a good day, but he was running to be, he was running in a Liberal nomination provincially because he doesn't want to work for Mark Carney anymore. And it was in Scarborough, and he lost by 19 votes, but there was a huge ethnic voting block to the point where the ballots were in another language. It feels problematic. He launched his appeal earlier this month after narrowly losing the nomination in Scarborough Southwest to entrepreneur Senol Hafiz by 19 votes. I apologize. I'm not great with ethnic names, except Eastern European names. I can nail those. Erskine Smith leveled a series of allegations over the way voting was conducted, saying there were 34 ballots recorded more than, this is funny, there were 34 ballots recorded more than there were registered voters. So how did that happen? In a 17-page decision, a 3-member arbitration committee said it found no irregularities in the conduct of the committee meeting that affected the result or called the vote integrity into question. They said they're satisfied the party's rules were followed and that Senol Hafiz was the true winner of the vote. The panel wrote, the appeal is dismissed. Now, I believe that is true. The problem is not that the rules were broken. The problem is the rules. And the rules in the Liberal Party are that you do not need to be a Canadian citizen to join the party and then vote in a nomination. And that's what happened here. So someone appealed to an ethnic voting bloc, signed up a bunch of people who were not Canadians, which is within the party rules, and then they voted. Now, Nate Erskine Smith might not like that, but them's the rules. And by the way, Nate, those are your rules. So he knew what the rules were on the way in. Maybe the Liberals could have changed their rules like other parties in the country have, Alberta, Saskatchewan, to make it so that Canadian citizens or people on a pathway to citizenship, like permanent residents who are going through the steps to become a citizen, only those people can join the party. and then vote in the nominations. Because you know what could have happened here is that this would have been something bigger than a nomination meeting. It could have been, I don't know, choosing the next leader of the party. And the next leader of the party by default is the prime minister of the country. Then you could have the prime minister of your country chosen by foreigners. And because there's no citizenship requirement, it's really easy for foreign influence to get involved here. If you're worried about that kind of thing, in fact, the Commission into Foreign Interference brought this one problem up. Michael Chong testified about it. I remember it explicitly as one of the standout moments during what felt like 3 months of my life, and was 3 months of my life. But they were warned. They were warned. So, I mean, what do you want me? I don't feel bad for Nate Erskine-Smith. He's the kind of guy who would have called everybody else a racist for fixing their nomination rules. Now reality came and got him, and he has to sit with it. As Shania Twain once sang, dance with the one that brought you. These are the people who brought you, Nate. They just switched partners on nomination day. And I don't feel bad for you one bit. All right. Last item before we hit an ad break, because I've been giving her for 40 minutes here by myself. Cable TV audiences are over 55. This should surprise nobody. Most people in a younger demographic are getting their news here, or here on your laptop, or in other podcasts, X. They're not relying on terrestrial TV anymore. New CRTC data confirm a sharp generational divide between Canadians who rely on TV newscasts and those who get their news on the internet. This explains so much, but it is also unsurprising. This is exactly why the last election turned out the way it did. A lower portion used regular television as a primary source for their news and information. But the Liberals will build a campaign strategy around this, and I believe they have. So the most commonly mentioned sources for news and information are television, 46%, followed by online media, 37%, radio, 34%, online social media and video sources at 29%. And this is a report called Public Opinion Research Tracker Wave 5. However, the national averages did not reflect a generational divide. Here's where things get perfectly helpful to the Liberals. The typical cable television subscriber in Canada is over 55. Right? So your elbows uppers. Canadians 55 or over are more likely to be satisfied with the news and information they receive than younger Canadians. Canadians under 45 are more likely to rely on social media for news and information. When this poll costs $250,000 and it polled 2,500 people for Ipsos. Audience members over 65 were more likely to be satisfied and likelier to trust the information provided by the Canadian news media to be accurate and impartial. So the people who are less on the internet are trusting television news, and the people who are more on the internet trust it less because they have something to compare it to. You know, if CBC goes to the trucker convoy, just kidding, they didn't go to the trucker convoy, even though it's right outside their building. But if CBC reports on the trucker convoy, the elbows up boomers believe it like it's gospel. But people who are 45, they watch CBC, if indeed they even watch CBC. I mean, it's a statistical rounding error, even though it's in every household in the country. But people under 45 are watching CBC and then going to social media and saying, well, the people who are there are actually not just saying something different, but physically showing us something different. And so those under 45s are less likely to trust terrestrial news, old-timey news. And yeah, of course. And it plays out in the voting. So those old-timers, they don't know that Rosie Barton is lying to them. They don't know that the at issue panel of boiled potatoes are saying things that aren't true. Young people of this country, if you want to save this country, you have to show your grandparents how to use the internet and like use it effectively so that they don't end up scammed by Nigerian love scammers. You know what I mean? I ended up in a real YouTube rabbit hole about that recently. But if you want to save this country from itself, young people, teach your grandparents how to use the internet. Show them how to use X. Show them how to watch an Instagram reel. Show them what's AI and what isn't. And I think that'll fix a lot of the problems when they are able to see that TV news, it can and does lie to you. I think that would be really helpful. It would be a public service to all of us, young people, if you could do that. All right, let's do an ad break. We'll come back on the other side. Doug Ford saying reasonable things in front of Melanie Joly, of all people. I noticed that over the weekend. Anyway, let's do an ad break. We'll be back on the other side.
Canada's been told to just quit smoking for decades, same message over and over, and yet millions of Canadians still smoke. So let's ask a follow-up question. For those who don't quit, what about change? In 2026, Canada has options that didn't exist years ago. Smoke-free alternatives for adults who would otherwise continue smoking. That doesn't mean risk-free, it means informed choice. If you don't smoke, don't start. If you smoke, quit. But for those who don't quit, change could still be part of the conversation. That's why Canadians should check out unsmoke.ca, an information resource focused on smoke-free alternatives and honest facts, not judgment. Put the lighter down, Canada. Learn what your options are.
In Canada, firearms owners like me understand the importance of safe, effective self-defense options. That's why we're proud to have Byrna as a sponsor. Byrna's less lethal launchers are designed to help protect you and your family without taking a life. Byrna offers peace of mind, accessibility, and a practical layer of personal security for Canadians who value safety. Learn more at byrna.ca/rebel. That's BYRNA.ca/rebel.
Gun bans make great distraction.
Trudeau may be gone, but Carney has picked up his same
We
rhetoric.
will quickly, and I mean quickly, reinvigorate the buyback of
Hunters, collectors, competitors, and defenders of tradition are still being targeted, while criminals run wild under Liberal policy. But we are fighting back. Join us. Canada's National Firearms Association, in defense of freedom.
Alrighty. I see that time is starting to get short. I'm actually getting very good at talking to myself. Efron, let's move a lot of the Alberta Independent stuff ahead to tomorrow. I think we should get to them. There are a lot of good clips there, but I just want to focus on the headliner stuff. Doug Ford. You guys know I'm a critic of Doug Ford. Sometimes he's really conservative and sounds a lot like a Ford. He's letting the Ford inside of him outside, and it's breaking through his handlers. And then sometimes he's just like an absolute Carney butt kiss. So you never know what you're going to get with him on any given day. And I think it has a lot to do with his proximity to the Liberals on any given day. But over the weekend, I think it might even have been Friday, Premier Ford, gun owners, protect your guns. Simple as that. Don't ever give them away. Let's watch.
Gun owners, protect your guns. Simple as that. Don't ever give them away.
from his lips to God's ears, but you know who was standing right beside him? Melanie Joly, Liberal MP. I think maybe Doug Ford forgot that she was there when his inner Ford became his outer Ford, but that's fine. That's good. The Liberals need to hear it. And Doug Ford is really good on this issue. You know, like he could also have his justice minister direct the Crown prosecutors to say that it is not in the interest of the public and public safety to be prosecuting people and dragging through the courts when they use a firearm in the defense of their lives. He could do that. I mean, that's what Premier Smith has done. But he is good on this issue. And I mean, Toronto is a prime example of why people need to own firearms and be proficient in firearms, because gang crime is out of control there. It's just out of control. If you're a rural person, you already know this. Police response times are, you know, your body will be cold by the time they get there. And it's not the police's fault. It's just distance. It's the laws of physics. But when we are seeing extortion rings, break-in enters, home invasions, and the police are telling you to leave your keys by the front door, maybe pack your TV into the trunk, make it easy, leave your jewelry in the glove box, you know, to presume that the guy breaking into your house is just there for your stuff and not something much worse. That's the police's advice to you in Toronto, or I think it was York, actually. Doug Ford is really good on this issue. I mean, he does need to go that one step further, but it was nice to see saying to people, never give them away, in front of a Liberal MP who's part of the government that is demanding that you give them to the government to be destroyed. It was good. It's a good Doug. I should have a board of good Doug, bad Doug. We should see who wins the week, if good Doug won or bad Doug won. Let's bump ahead to Mark Carney. He said that he is really just campaigning for Alberta to stay within Canada. Maybe he should stop doing things that drive us out of Canada. It's just a thought. Let's watch.
What do you think of the referendum question that Daniel Smith has asked? How do you see your role in this debate, and what do you plan to do to campaign for Canadian unity?
Well, let me start at the end, which is I certainly will be campaigning for Canadian unity. I've begun that, and part of the campaign is not a campaign, but it's actions. It's practicing cooperative federalism with Alberta, with Quebec, with all provinces and territories in the country, with Indigenous peoples as well. So it's moving the country forward, but moving the country forward with agreements and with parties aligned. So finding that common ground so we can move. And that's what Albertans expect. That's what Canadians expect across the country. And I'm pleased that the premiers are buying into this and moving forward on a number of fronts. So that's the first thing. And if I may just refer to my previous answer with respect to cooperation agreements, including potentially with the province of Quebec, that is an example of that cooperation. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, of course, being part of Canada brings many economic advantages, being part of our large market, being part of free trade agreements with 1.5 billion people around the world. But in the core, it's more than economic arguments, and I'm going to get to the first part of your question in a second. It's more than economic benefits, it's social. It's what we are as Canadians. So Canadians take care of each other. We take care of each other in our social programs. We take care of each other across different provinces. We look out for each other internationally, and this is a time where it's particularly important. What do I think of the question? In terms of the specifics of the question, we have an obligation as the federal government to look at the question and determine whether it's consistent with the Clarity Act that is underway. Ultimately, if there are questions around that, questions about the clarity of the question, if you follow, that would be a role for Parliament. I'm not saying that's the case, but we're just in the process of doing our due diligence. I will make the following observation though about the question, and it's this is an observation from experience. In these separation issues, it is often advanced that vote for this and it's a free option. Vote for this and we will strengthen your our hand in a future negotiation. That is a very dangerous bluff. That is a very dangerous bluff.
Not a bluff.
I saw firsthand what happened in the United Kingdom when the view was vote for this, it'll be soft, and then we'll negotiate, etc. And they ended up, and they're still 10 years later trying to undo what people didn't think they were voting for, but what they ended up having. Les Canadiens peuvent.
That's enough. I've heard enough. What a bunch of ridiculous fear-mongering. Yes, they did vote for Brexit in the UK, and you know what happened? Nothing bad. There was some market uncertainty, but the sky didn't fall. Everything is okay. They survived. They came out the other side, and they are more autonomous. Like the fear-mongering that came out during Brexit, and it was called Project Fear. It was so ludicrous. When people didn't fall for the big stuff, they were hoping that people would fall for the little stuff. You know, they said, well, how are we going to travel to the rest of the EU? I don't know, the same way the other people from outside the EU travel. Then they said, you know what, we're not going to be able to get food that's grown on the continent. The Sandwich Association, I cite this one because this is the example Ezra always brings up, because don't you take that man's sandwiches away. And they said, we won't be able to get, certain cuts of cold cuts because our trade agreements will fall apart with the EU. I've been to London post-Brexit, and you can get all the sandwiches you want. Like, it's just so crazy. And then he's talking to Canadians like we didn't watch all of that unfold. And he says, we're working with cooperative federalism. Yeah, I've seen how cooperative federalism works. No pipelines. No. Good promises for promises for promises for potential pipelines, and no private sector proponents of pipelines. Our cooperative federalism has driven us to make pipeline deals with the Americans, and they were approved just like that. The Bridger pipeline, which is like Keystone Light, right away. Tell us how we can get a deal done with the Americans. Lickety split. But we can't manage to get a deal done within Canada. A shorter pipeline, by the way, to the West Coast than that Bridger pipeline. That's cooperative federalism for us. He's talking about it like we have examples of it working. Where? Kindly tell me where, good sir. He didn't actually give any examples. And then he goes on to say, this is who we are as Canadians. We take care of each other. Actually, Alberta takes care of everybody. And we're tired of it. We just wanted some permission to work in return and protect our own culture. And we have never gotten that. So now a healthy chunk of Albertans, I think latest polling is like 35%, has said, actually, we'll take it for ourselves then. And you got to listen to Andrew Coyne say stuff like, oh, but if you're leaving, we're going to keep the oil. You're going to keep the oil that's physically underneath the ground in Alberta for Canada. That's not how it works. The province has control over the resources. And if the province leaves, we take the resources with us. What are you going to do? Directional drill in from BC to get access to it? That's crazy. That's why we want to leave these hot takes from the heart of Laurentia from Andrew Coyne. That's why we want to leave. And yeah, we don't need Mark Carney's permission. Albertans will decide eventually. I think we have a referendum on a referendum. But that also, on the other side of that, gives people more time to sort of thoughtfully think about what comes next and make a really good informed decision about their future. And the longer it takes to get a pipeline, any pipeline, the more people will sort of go from the, yeah, I'll stay, I'm Canadian, to maybe this ain't working. So if we don't see a pipeline in weeks, I think it's really bad for the feds and the federalists. Let's go to this clip from my friend Cian Bexty, my former colleague here at Rebel News, who's now over at Juno. He called Nenshi, the NDP leader, Alberta's boogeyman. And I haven't watched this, but I agree without even watching.
When that election is called, we're ready to fight it. And by the way, if Danielle believes in the polls, call the election now. When that election is called, we're ready to fight it. And by the way, if Danielle believes in the polls, call the election now.
I want to put that on the side of a billboard truck. Just that clip. What a tactless, repulsive demeanor. I'm not saying he's repulsive as a human being, but like, is he picking his nose? What is he doing there? Pushing up his glasses? Why did he do it like that? Like, go from the side. There's a camera on you. You know, like, go, like, what are you doing? Are you itching your nose? Why do you have to use your whole side fist to do it? And then like that, like, is he unaware that there's a camera on him? It's a press conference, my dude. And then again, he does this whole, like, I'm so fed up with all of you, even my supporters, that like his eyes closed and he talks through his closed eyes. This is how I feel when my daughter leaves crumbs all over the counter and I wake up in the morning and there's crumbs everywhere. That's my look as I'm making coffee. But this is not a press conference face. No, I don't know. He's the worst. Even the NDP are getting sick of him. Although, like, the benches are so shallow over there, who are they going to replace him with? Sarah Hoffman? That would just be trolling me for the next 4 years, because then I would have to keep all my little jokes inside. I don't know. Who do you replace him with? I don't know. I hope he never shuts up, though. Like, as far as thinking that attacking Danielle Smith is helpful to the NDP, it's actually helpful to her, because he just keeps trotting himself out as the alternative, and then people look at the alternative and they say, him? Yeah, him? So yeah, never shut up, Nenshi. All right, let's hit this quick Alberta fact check. I wrote this up this morning in the wee hours of the morning, because for those of you who don't know, I added 3 extra hours to my workday in a little project that I'm doing with Corey Morgan called Alberta Fact Check. And what we do is we round up the lies from the night before and then undo them in the morning as sort of like a rapid response team so that wherever you fall down on independence, and I know some of you out here watching, you are proud Canadians and you want to stay that way. That's fine. We're a place of diverse opinions around here, so you can agree with me, you can not agree with me, but at least you know where I honestly stand. And this was from Mark Carney, and Blacklock's broke it, so full credit to them for dissecting this. Mark Carney keeps calling himself a proud Albertan, but Blacklock's caught him stumbling over Alberta history. This was quite something. Blacklock's reporter dug into Prime Minister Mark Carney's comments about Alberta history and found a series of strange factual errors and historical mix-ups, I wrote at 5:45 this morning. Carney likes to remind Albertans that Alberta is home. He says, I arrived in my home province of Alberta. He did his campaign kickoff here, back home in Alberta for the Stampede. No place like it. It's always great to be back home in Alberta. But when Carney recently attempted to tribute great Albertans in Parliament, things went sideways in a hurry. He said, from Alberta's first Prime Minister, Joe Clark. Joe Clark was not Alberta's first Prime Minister. He was not the first one we produced. That distinction belongs to Richard Bedford Bennett. He represented Calgary in the legislature and then became Prime Minister in 1930. And then when they reached out to him to, like, ask him why he made this mistake, his office tried to clarify by saying he actually meant the first Prime Minister born in Alberta. And then he mentioned Stephen Harper, which some of you may not know, but Stephen Harper was actually born in Toronto. So in his correction, he screwed up his correction. And then Blacklocks has caught him doing this before. He claimed that the oil sands were mostly a concept or a curiosity when Carney was first born in 1965. But historical records show that, of course, oil sands development was commercially viable well before that, I think by the early 1960s. But he keeps doing this. And he tries to claim that he's like an Albertan and he knows everything about Alberta, and he's some sort of encyclopedia hometown boy, and that's why us Albertans should trust him. But it's like he didn't even fully read a ChatGPT summary of where the prime ministers have come from with any sort of Alberta connection whatsoever. Quite something. Quite his hometown boy. Should we hit the cringe? We've got one chat. Astro Sweat gives us $5. Alberta's independence will preserve traditional values that were once common in Canada. I know a lot of reluctant separatists feel that way. People who are like, look, we tried, it's not working, we don't want to fight. But yeah, like the Canada of our youth, some of it still lives here. And if for a lot of separatists, they feel like if we don't leave, then it will be overtaken too. And so that's what separatists, many of them are trying to do. Corey David Schreier, 1870. Sheila, who are some of your favorite Christian rock musicians, bands, past or present? I'll give you one off the top of my head. And they're from northern Alberta, and they're called High Valley. They're called High Valley. And they are, look, and again, you guys know I like my grandpa country music. So High Valley does a couple things quite unique. So they're from Bloomenort, Alberta. It's even smaller than Lacrete. Lacrete has 3,000 people. They're very religious young men, Christian, family men. They kind of look like models, though, as so many farm boys do. And they do like a sort of atrocious pop country version of everything. That sells, right? That's how the young people start listening to the music. But a lot of their music, they do also a bluegrass version of it that appeals to Sheila. But it's all Christian. But you don't know. You would never know. So like when I see them in concert, I see them at rodeos. They play a lot of rodeos and stuff like that. And I see them there. And I see all these little buckle bunnies bopping along to Christian music. And I think, you tricked a generation, guys. Good for you. So High Valley, like them. They're from north Alberta. Ask me again tomorrow. I'll maybe give you another example. Independent Alberta gifted 5 subscriptions to Rebel News. Well, thank you so much. Maybe we'll just show some pictures from the CCFR AGM. Because I see that we dug up the CCFR's tweet. Ryan from Northern Perspective was there, and he gave a great speech. And then I was there. I gave the keynote on who I am, why I care about gun rights. I give a little personal story there. And I went through a list of some of the more atrocious things the media continues to get wrong about firearms reporting, and how you can draw a line from what they get wrong to the next firearm that's banned. It's interesting when you look at the pattern, right? And, you know, I left on a hopeful note. All we can do is fight. All we can do is fight back. You know, sometimes it seems that everything is lost, and, you know, you're up against such a radical government on this issue, and they're so hell-bent on scapegoating the wrong people because we are the path of least resistance. But what I've learned in my nearly 11 years here at Rebel News is all you can do is fight. And when you pick up the fight, others will join you. And all of a sudden, you're not alone. You have this mobilized movement of people who come from different places, have different backgrounds, like different disciplines of shooting, or maybe they don't even shoot at all, but they care about the truth and honesty and making sure the bad guys stay in jail. And all of a sudden you're moving in the right direction. And then all of a sudden your appeal is going to the Supreme Court, as is the case with the CCFR. So, and who knows, they just might win, which I'm just so hopeful for. And by the way, the CCFR, I don't want to give it all away because it was in their financial statements and I was eavesdropping. And, but what I can tell you is fewer than 10 people actually are on staff there. So when you see what they're doing and all the things that they are capable of and these massive rallies that they're organizing and the impact that they're having, even just you see their merch everywhere, there's stickers everywhere. Fewer than 10 people. Such respect for the donations that they receive for what they do. And I'm really grateful. I had a great time, and someone at our table won the shotgun. And it wasn't rigged. It was an entirely random door prize, which was an absolute delight. Okay, we have one that we can use as the cringe. The lady. Is this from Billboard Chris? Efron? I think it is. Yes. Yeah, this is the lady. Oh. This is, again, TV boomers, right? The cable TV boomers. They, you know, you can pick them out of a lineup. This lady confronted Billboard Chris after Billboard Chris asked Polyev about child mutilation under the guise of gender-affirming care, and she lost her marbles. Let's just watch real quick.
We're having a conversation. Why don't you tell me, why do you think we should sterilize kids?
I'm not answering your question. I'm asking you.
Do you think we should sterilize kids?
It's a pretty offensive way to approach the man.
Is it?
Well, it sounded like to me offensive, and I'm not him.
I apologize.
Do you think it's okay to cut off the breasts of a healthy 14-year-old girl just because she thinks she's been born in the wrong body?
You can put that down.
No, it's staying on. See, you can't have a conversation about it, can you? I'm asking you factual questions, and you have nothing to say. You're at the wrong convention. Unless you're here working for CBC.
Exactly.
We're having a conversation.
There was Drea off in pursuit, by the way. But it is true, when you put these people, when you put the facts to them about what's actually happening, and then ask them to justify their own opinions, they've got nothing to say. And they all of a sudden realize that I shouldn't be saying these things on camera. You know, like they'll come up to Chris and say that he's transphobic and he's hateful and he's this. But when you ask them to justify their side, they get slightly violent. Like, what are you doing, lady? Grab it in his camera. Behave yourself. And then she storms off. Why? Because how do you justify mastectomies on healthy girls? Irreversible mastectomies on healthy girls. How do you justify it? Grammy. Go back to Rosie Barton, Grammy. All right. I think that's the show for today. Do we have any more chats? Did I do it? I did it all by myself, guys. We have one more? I think I got them. Yeah, I think I got them, Efron. Oh, we do have one. Jess and GP, Sheila loves Nickelback? No. No. You know what? I don't hate them. I know that it's culturally expedient, I think is the right word, to dislike them. I could take them or leave them, actually. Like, I don't care. Yeah, they're from Alberta. Yeah, they made it big. That's great. But so is Ian Tyson, and I like him better. You know what I mean? So I think that's the show for today. If you guys want to bring back your best guesses about my musical tastes for tomorrow, I'll be here with my friend Lise Merle from Regina, Saskatchewan. Efron, thanks for running the show today while Olivia is off. To those of you who engaged with the content, pitched in a little bit to keep the lights on here at Rebel News, we couldn't do it without you. We appreciate you so much. Thanks for your patience with me today. And I'll see everybody tomorrow. And as we frequently say on the show here, if you find us offensive, maybe don't find us at all.